I have really been struck by the number of people who claimed that they were diehard Bernie supporters, who were appalled at the way he behaved in that Senate confirmation here. I mean, it was just so the blowhard of the like putting up pictures of onesies and being like, do you denounce these onesies? Like, yes, thank you, Bernie. The real hard-hitting issues of the world, some tongue-in-cheek onesies that said like, I think we're mocking like the vaccine passports and being like, no vaccine, no problem, come on in. But him like blowing up these onesies, and it really is something to see this guy who people looked at as like a champion of the people, just totally exposed as like, just defending power, trying to smear the guy who's a threat to power. I was appalled by it. I'm curious, what your feelings are.
Yeah, it's interesting. Many of our leading volunteers on the Kennedy campaign were former Bernie people. And the only thing they got burned by was Bernie. And people feel real burned by Bernie right now. I mean, I see him now out there just kind of throwing his hand around, spitting these, statements that from a place of he believes virtue. And I see a guy who literally has no neck. And I ask myself, was he a psyop all along? Like, was he a plant? Was he a deep state plant? Because, having those kind of sleeper cells are helpful. You get people around this thing that they all want, and you have them cornered, and then you take them along on this, journey that goes nowhere. Yep. And the number one thing that will defeat America is defeating the American spirit that believes it has sovereignty and the ability to overcome hardship. If you beat that out of people, that hope out of people, you can do whatever you want. Corruption reigns with incredible freedom and lack of scrutiny. And was Bernie that? I have to ask myself that question today, because his campaign was so convincing and so desperately wanted by so many millions of Americans. We're still to this day made to believe that it was all grassroots. But I've, having made now some fancy political ads and looking at the ads he made, which are some of the best ads ever made in American elections history, I have to ask myself, like, I question whether the narrative around Bernie Sanders is accurate. That this was a true grassroots movement. Okay,
so I know this happened back in, I want to say this was like around 2012. So it was before Bernie Sanders was running for president. So Ron Paul had introduced this audit the Fed bill in the Congress. And Ron Paul had these presidential runs, which, Bernie Sanders kind of mimicked in his own way. They didn't blow up the way Bernie Sanders did, but he had gotten a lot of interest over this audit the Fed because, the Federal Reserve is like this shadow government that's shadow bank that's quasi-government, quasi-private. It's never been truly audited. They print money out of thin air. Like, if you learn a little bit about it, you'd be like, yeah, we should be allowed to look at the books of that. Mm-hmm. And so Bernie Sanders said he was on board with it. He got his own version of the audit the Fed bill to propose in the Senate. And before it could pass, he gutted the whole thing of all its auditing power. And I remember Ron Paul was like, wait, why would you do that? That was the whole teeth of the bill. And that's always just kind of struck me as like, when it really comes down to it, Bernie Sanders will be on the side of power. And all I'm saying is that since then, at every single junction where it really matters, like when it comes down to it, like are you going to endorse Hillary Clinton, or are you going to try to draw some concessions out of her before you endorse her, or are you going to walk, and nope, fall in line, endorse Hillary Clinton. And this Bobby Kennedy hearing just seems to be one more example of that like when there's an actual threat to power at the last minute, Bernie Sanders comes in and then tries to take the pressure off and protect power. What's interesting is that this time it does not seem to be going over like it did in the other ones. And, for him, I just saw him the other day on one of these news shows, and he's saying his problem with Bobby is that he wasn't supporting Medicare for all. And if you truly care about health, you have to support Medicare for all. And I just think that people who have been following you and Bobby's presidential campaign it's just like not working on them. Cause like you go like, look, however you feel about Medicare for all, obviously I oppose it, and I oppose all these government health insurance schemes. But it's like, if you're having the conversation of why we are so sick as a society, then whether you believe in Medicare for all or you believe in complete private insurance or anything in the middle, none of that addresses the heart of the issue. Like, if whatever's poisoning us isn't dealt with, then you could have government insurance or private insurance. You're still going to have sick people. And it's like, in the Bernie Sanders worldview, the only thing you're allowed to say about health is that the government should be paying for your medical treatment.
Yeah, cheaper drugs. More drugs, cheaper drugs.
Yeah,
government pays for them.
Yeah. And like, I don't know. Yeah. I don't actually think the answer is like, okay, so we have, I mean, if you just take any one of the answers, it's like, so every, I got a little boy now, and he doesn't sit still for, I mean, he's young, he's only 3, but he doesn't sit still. He's always all over the place. And like, you're telling me in 3 years, if he doesn't sit still, I should put him on methamphetamines? Like, no, I'm not going to do that. And I don't really care if you offer me cheaper meth. I still don't want to put him on that. Like, that's not, I don't really care if I had to pay out of pocket or if, but like, the government's going to pay for it. That doesn't seem to be the issue to me. The issue seems to be like, how sick are we as a society that we're medicating little kids? This is madness. And that what we're never allowed to have this conversation is just even crazier.
Yeah. Bernie did it again with RFK's confirmation. If you rewind about 4 months ago, he starts coming on the scene as being this pro-health, make America healthy again guy. And we even thought, I was like, oh, is Bernie joining our team? And it's like, there's a part of us that wants to believe that Bernie is actually the guy that we held him out to be in 2016. And the reality is I think this is the final straw that broke the Bernie back. I think if anyone had any bit of hope at all that he was the guy that we once thought he was, that hope is gone. He did it. He baited us again. He said, okay, well, we have this horrible health crisis in America. We've got to investigate it. And he baited us back in. He got the airtime. He got our community looking back at him and being like, are you going to step in and be a hero here? And then as he baited people in, he then holds that conference, the vaccine safety conference, where he only brings in like folks like Offit and individuals who are maximalist vaccine, toe the party line types. He doesn't bring in any of the, at this point, you could throw a rock out your back door and hit someone who's been vaccine injured. I mean, that's how many people are affected. He could have brought in any one of those individuals to come and tell their story, but he doesn't. He's keeping that population silent. And we're giving up. I'm officially giving up hope that Bernie is nothing other than just a big pharma shill. He will never be anything other than that, and his legacy will go down as that.